You're listening to the Ones Ready podcast, a team of Air Force Special Operators forged in combat with over 70 years of combined operational experience, as well as a decade of selection instructor experience. If you're tired of settling and you want to do something you truly believe in, you're in the right place. Now here's your host, PJ Team Leader, former INDOC instructor supervisor, entrepreneur, and physician assistant, Brian Silva.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another juicy episode of the Ones Ready podcast. Today, we have some awesome guests in the team room with us, not of the Air Force type, but of the Coast Guard type. Really cool. Rescue Swimmer Mindset guys are on here to talk to us and talk to you guys about specifically their career field and what kind of drew them, all the kind of ins and outs. Part of the episodes that we're going to be doing with Green Berets and Rangers and anyone else we can get on the show to help differentiate those jobs between all the aspect war jobs and help you guys decide which one's the right one for you. So before we get into that, I want to thank you guys first. It's been a little over a year now for us doing the Ones Ready podcast, and the growth and the support from the community as well as from you guys, the fans, has been outstanding, and we just really appreciate you. I know you guys are thinking about your New Year's goals and all that kind of stuff, getting into 2021, and you're ready for 2020 to be over. But, any adversity is going to help you grow better. So hopefully 2020 was one of those years that you had some adversity that helped you grow. So we're here to also thank our partners here. We got Hoist. If you guys haven't checked out Hoist, they make the best rehydration drink, bar none. It's IV level hydration, and what that means for you guys is as soon as you drink it, you get that absorption and then you get rehydrated. Literally, like if I ever have a headache because I'm dehydrated or whatever, I'll grab a Hoist, chug that thing, and I'll feel better instantly. So you guys make sure you check them out. Use the code ONESREADY at checkout. That's drinkhoist.com. All right. So let's get into this rescue swimmer thing. I know for myself, we're going to talk about the movie later, and we're going to bring it up a lot. So I'm not going to bring it up too much right now.
Just right out the gate.
I just wanted to, because everyone knows about it, but it was an awesome movie, and Ashton Kutcher did a great job, I think. We'll see the opinions of the rescue swimmers, but I personally, it inspired me when I was going through training and everything like that, because it came out in like 2006, and I was getting through dive school or whatever, but it motivated me to just see the stuff that I could potentially be doing if I were going to be on a helicopter doing rescues, because PJs do similar missions, but that's what we're here to talk about, what kind of stuff PJs versus rescue swimmers and all that kind of stuff do. And also I had to mention this, unfortunately Peach didn't make the cut on the episode today because there was a height limit on this kind of thing, just when you go on rides and this kind of stuff in these helicopters. There's a little bit of a height limit. So I wanted to bring that up, and I'm sorry that Peach couldn't be here today, but
we have a 5-foot height requirement for today's podcast. Yeah, so unfortunately Peach he's out. All
right. So if you don't mind, we have Cody and Vince on, like I said, rescue swimmers. They do the Rescue Swimmer Mindset podcast. So they're going to be talking to you guys a little bit about what they have done in the past and what they're doing now. So if you guys don't mind introducing yourselves.
Yeah. So like Brian said, I am Cody Wright. I'm a former Coast Guard helicopter rescue swimmer. I got in the Coast Guard in 2011 and then got out in 2017. Vince.
I had a similar story. Vince here, swimmer number 873. And yeah, I believe I started in 2012, got out 2016. And served at the same station as Cody near the end there in Air Station Detroit. Good old Great Lakes.
Solid time.
Yeah. Gorgeous. I got to be, as an Ohio guy, like I'm wearing my brown sweatshirt right now. Like the Great Lakes, that's got to be a great place to be stationed there in the upper Midwest.
Is it sarcasm? I hope it's sarcasm. I don't know.
It's like 50-50.
No problem. Can you guys just do me a favor and walk us through it? So what we want to do is we want to start to lay this all out sort of from brass tacks, right? So the Coast Guard has rescue swimmers, the Coast Guard mission. Just for people that don't know or they might not be sensitized to the Coast Guard at all, can you just give us a once over the world? Like, what is the Coast Guard's mission? And then how do rescue swimmers fit into that mission?
Okay, so Coast Guard, they do a lot of missions. Mostly stateside. There are some that deploy to the Middle East with certain cutters go out there. But our main mission is search and rescue, and then law enforcement on stateside. So a lot of that's drug interdiction, search and rescue from the boats and the helicopters. So our job as rescue swimmers specifically covers only search and rescue. So we pretty much cover every body of water that is like of a decent size in the country, including the Great Lakes, like we were talking about, all 5 of those Great Lakes. Up in Alaska, we have an air station. We have 2 air stations in Alaska, 1 in Hawaii, 1 in Puerto Rico, Florida, a bunch in Florida. So we just cover all the lakes, search and rescue. Law enforcement, I can't speak too much of it just because we haven't really done it in our career. Vince, what do you got?
I actually did a little bit of a boarding team like member. So, you're doing those. Either you're basically boarding these different vessels. I did that in the Bering Sea in Alaska. So basically that was funny. Like you get on these vessels and you're checking their life saving devices. So like any type of vests, in case their ship sinks, their rafts, you're inspecting all that, but you're also checking their fisheries, right? And one of the very few boardings I did, I recall, was in the Bering Sea in Alaska. And I get paired with one of these fishermen and they take us down into the bow of the ship and they go, you basically ask them these questions. So I was like, all right, show me your PFDs. What's the expiration on those? And he goes like, oh, sweet. Like, this is that. And then he goes, but do you have any questions for me? And I go like, what do you mean like questions for you? And he's like, well, like for me. And I was like, is this guy flirting with me? I don't understand what's going on. And I go like, what about your, whatever, like security thing I needed to check, like what's the expiration on this? And he goes like, oh no, do you have any questions for like about the show? And I go like, what show? And he goes like, The Deadliest Catch. Like, you don't recognize the boat? And I go like, oh, never seen it.
Oh wow.
See his face,
oh
just
man.
drop, like,
dude, you
like,
killed
the
his
shot. Yeah, I was gonna say the shot to his ego that you had no idea, even after he led you into it. The fact that you just had no clue. That's fantastic.
He's like, I'll still sign your PFD. I don't care if you've seen it or not.
You just have to like skulk on back home.
Yeah,
So
my research after he was pretty famous about like,
that's pretty funny. Like, and the Coast Guard went viral. I think it was like halfway through last year, maybe this year or whatever. But the dude jumping onto the submarine with pistol drawn, like that was pretty badass. Like, I don't really have a question there. I just want to say that video was awesome, and it's part of the mission that people don't really understand, that the Coast Guard really does get after it as far as drug interdiction, and you guys, especially at the search and rescue, like you guys are really, really busy.
Yeah, we were stationed down in. I was stationed in Marathon, Florida, which is like on the basically like middle part of the Florida Keys, and we would be dealing with like drug interdiction and migrant interdiction like on almost like a daily basis. It was like pretty constant, pretty crazy. Yeah,
that's crazy. So Vince, I'll start with you. What drew you to being a rescue swimmer? Did you want to go into the Coast Guard first and just happen to figure out that rescue swimmer was a cool gig, or was it the other way around? Did you figure out what a rescue swimmer was and you're like, I want to do that?
Well, so I'm actually Canadian, as you can see from, if you're tuning in on YouTube in the backdrop there. And I was a tree planter out in like the western part of Canada, and we had a medevac, like a pretty severe injury, like life threatening. And who came in to assist us way back in the backcountries in the mountains here was a Canadian Star Tech. So it's basically the Canadians' version of the rescue swimmers, and they're really proficient. Yeah. They're actually a lot more like an Air Force PJ than they are like.
We've worked. I think, Brian, did you ever work with the Canadian PJs? I have a couple times.
I never did. No.
Yeah, we got a chance to work with them a couple times. They're badass, man. They're awesome. They're really, really proficient.
What's your experience with them? Are they? Yeah, I never aside from that, I never interacted.
No, they're really good. Yeah, comparatively, like all of the capabilities are the same. Obviously, we have the combat, that combat aspect, and we do a lot more things with embedding with other ground teams and not specifically in the air. But those guys are really proficient. Their rope skills are dope. Their medicine is good. Like, they're able to get out there and get after it. I was really impressed by working with those guys a couple times that we worked with them. So,
yeah.
So Cody, what about you, man? Like, how did you hear about it?
Yeah, so I kind of have a long history at the Coast Guard. My dad spent 27 years in the Coast Guard. So I grew up going around air stations. He was an aviation electronics technician, which is a flight mechanic on the helicopters. So the flight mechanics and rescue swimmers work kind of hand in hand. So growing up, I was always around flight mechanics, rescue swimmers, and I ended up graduating high school, going to college for a year, and college was going okay. I wasn't failing or anything. I just was kind of bored. So I decided to join the Coast Guard and try to be a swimmer, because I always kind of had in the back of my mind growing up, and I just kind of decided to go for it.
Did either of you guys know about PJ or any other kind of rescue asset that was out there beforehand?
So I I had not heard of PJs. I was like, at the time I was looking at joining either the Navy to try to go to BUD/S, try to be a Navy SEAL, or just join the Coast Guard. And just like my ties to the Coast Guard kind of drew me to that, but I hadn't heard of PJs at all. Wasn't until a couple years in that I heard of them.
Nice. All right. And Vince, I cut you off there. I want you to finish your story. Like you were a tree planter. You sort of heard about it. You worked with some Canadian PJs, and then how'd you find your way in?
Yeah, I'll unstick my feet from the maple syrup here. So basically, I was out there. These SAR techs came in, and basically I started looking into that gig. And I guess the reality of that was it's a long process of the selection. Just you got to work through like a paramedic. I think they recommend you're a full paramedic before even joining, and then after that, it's like a big selection process, and it's at least 2 years. And I recall, we talked about the gardening as a joke, but that is like the thing I saw later on, like after I started researching the SAR tech, and I was like, oh wait, this is a pretty cool Hollywood movie. Let me investigate, right? And I did, and yeah, just looking through the system and the pipeline, it seemed like if you're really driven, at the time I enlisted, you could become a fully operational rescue swimmer within like a year, which I did. And that's basically why I went that route. You get to travel a little bit more. Canada's restricted to Canada and like Great White North and like maybe the Arctic. But aside from that, like in the Coast Guard, I got to travel in Hawaii. I was stationed there. I got to go to Guam, Japan. And then you have like all those separate islands like Puerto Rico. So that was kind of my decision, was I can become an operational swimmer faster and I get to travel a little more.
You get to thaw out a little bit down in the Caribbean. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Get the Canadian crust off,
You're right. Yeah. So one of the things that happens is we all get on here and we start saying things like pararescue or rescue swimmer. And I think we forget at times that the people out there listening, not all of them know exactly what that means. And these are pretty broad subjects. So Cody, let's start with you. When you say rescue swimmer, like what does that actually mean job wise? What do you actually do?
Yeah, for the Coast Guard, so an aviation helicopter rescue swimmer. So we have two main jobs after you get to your pipeline. Basically, one portion of your job is doing not aircraft maintenance, but like life-saving systems maintenance. So maintenance on all life-saving gear on a helicopter. So, you have life rafts, flotation devices, stuff like that. And then our other job is to be like an actual rescue swimmer, part of the air crew. So you kind of split your duties there. The rescue swimmer portion is, the one that like gets all the glory. It's just like the freaking, it's what you see in the Guardian, all that stuff. And then there's the maintenance side, which is just like,
no one wants to see a movie about that.
It's like kind of boring.
Yeah. Nobody wants to see all the work that actually goes into making sure that everything goes off. They just want to see you, they want to see you helocast and go save somebody, out of a sinking ship.
Basically, yeah.
And one of the many things that like swimmers like to kind of keep on the DL, and it's not a big part of our duties or collateral duties, but technically we're actually aviation survival technicians. So rescue swimmers, the collateral duty, it's responding as an EMT and whatnot to an overturned vessel or somebody that's injured out at sea or in the backcountry, right? But what the other folks in the service like to call the ASTs, the aviation survival technicians, is aviation sewing technicians, because that's one thing that we occasionally do is like sew and repair certain like things are related to aviation. So like it's like a little inside stab that they always like do to the ASTs,
Yeah, it's actually like a fair, like a decent amount of the ASTA school, our training school. Like we spend a good 2 weeks just sewing, not like every day, basically Monday through Friday.
You guys are like a dash of SEER, a dash of PJ. But like, what's how deep into the medical do you all go? Because like those of us that aren't PJs maybe joke around a little bit that PJs are like, meds with knots, but like, but they're pretty good at medicine, but like how far down that rabbit hole do y'all go?
Yeah. So after you graduate from rescue swimmer school, they send you to EMT school, and the Coast Guard puts on their own EMT school. It's just EMT basic. So once you graduate from that, you go to your air station. That's pretty much as far as the Coast Guard covers for the most part for medical. If you get stationed at one unit in Alaska, Air Station Sitka, they'll get you to like an advanced EMT, but that's as far as we go because we're mainly just transporting. We'll do like medevacs off cruise ships, stuff like that, but we're just transporting survivors or victims, and they're going to a hospital for advanced care. So it's usually pretty quick flights.
As far as like what we're qualified to do as just as EMTs, like kind of the basic traction, femur fractures, King Airways. So that's one of the kind of cooler things that we can do that a regular EMT can't do, putting those tubes in, inflating that, and then doing some assisted ventilation, tourniquets, second chest wound, all that stuff. But we can't do the cool like Air Force PJ needle stabbing in the chest thing, which is always highly.
That's a technical term too. That's actually needle stabbing in the chest thing is actually what we call it.
That's why they won't give us the qual.
I was going to say that's probably a good indicator that you're not ready for the needle stabbing in the chest thing.
Is it chest decompression? What is it? Like, I am embarrassed now.
Yeah. So decompress the chest.
Needle
is the easiest way to say.
Yeah.
Nah, we're updating the Air Force website tonight to say exactly what you said.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're in.
Needle stick them now.
Some of the things that we get asked a lot also is, everybody out there, the people thinking about joining they want to know about dive, free fall, shooting schools, all the cool guy stuff. So hit me with the cool guy stuff, and then any missions that you've had where you've utilized some of those cool guy skills, to give me the top 10% cool guy stuff that y'all do.
Well, so for cool guy stuff, one of the knocks, I guess, on rescue swimmers is we don't get a lot of cool guy stuff. We just get our basic rescue swimmer, we get to rescue swimmer school, and then we're kind of qualified to jump out of the helicopter, jump into, big seas. And that's pretty much like our big thing. Like that's all we got. But some of the cooler stuff on the Great Lakes, I didn't get any of these cases, but we do a lot of time training. We have this training center in Astoria, Oregon. It's called Advanced Helicopter Rescue Summer School. And we'll basically we're jumping out of helicopters into 30 foot waves, breaking seas and doing rescues just with our simulated survivor. Would be like me and Vince going out there and just jumping into those waves and getting after it. Cave rescues, we'll do cave training out there. So basically there's this big cave that's probably 30, maybe it's 40 feet wide at the opening. And then it goes back maybe 60 to 80 yards or 80 meters. And, you go in there and you learn cave hydraulics. So you swim in there, breaking waves, breaking into the cave, and you learn how to maneuver inside a cave based on the hydraulics of the water that's moving in there. So if you're a survivor in there, you have to know how to get in there, navigate to the cave, usually stay to the right. And the wave hydraulics or the ocean hydraulics kind of take you through the cave. You can get your survivor and kind of get out of there safely.
So if you guys have seen The Guardian, right, which you guys brought up, that cave, which is apparently in Alaska in the movie, right?
Don't put it on us. You wanted to bring it up again.
I do. But we just talked about it with somebody stationed in Kodiak, Alaska, which is where that movie was based. And we were talking about the cave. The cave is actually in Astoria, Washington. That's the same cave that Cody was just talking about, that we train in.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's pretty cool.
So, and then my last thing that I've got for this round of questioning is, besides the hair thing, you guys obviously have a lot in common with pararescue. I was actually hoping that both y'all were still active and you had hair like that.
Oh, yeah.
I'm joining the Coast Guard tomorrow.
That's why I got out.
That's it. Yeah,
I had to grow the hair out, so I had to get out.
Get it.
But and you talk about jumping into the high seas and all that other stuff. It's not a big deal. To me, that's a big deal. But what are the situations where you guys would be called if there was a PJ team also in the area? What's the big difference? What do you guys? Why would they call you instead of them? Besides the hair thing.
Oh yeah,
that's a tough question. That probably comes down to the whoever's on operations, I guess, for that specific mission. From my understanding and talking on our podcast with Brendan Deckard, he was talking about sometimes way out there in the backcountry, it tends to be more PJs. I guess it comes down to capacity as well as which station is located closer and can respond the most efficiently and expeditiously to the situation at hand. I'd say overall on the coast, if it's within the proximity of the range of a 60 helicopter, it would probably come to the Coast Guard. But again, I don't know specifically. I feel like the PJs can get out a little further,
Yeah, that's definitely a tough question to answer. I mean, I just wanted to put that out there just because we're doing kind of verses and people kind of see if it's this mission, it's going to be definitely this person. Or if it's this mission, it's going to definitely be this person, because that's how the internet works. And, those people that are on the other side of Reddit, of course, know everything because they've read some stuff. But, the reality is kind of like you're saying, depending on the situation, who's ready, who's going to respond faster, because you have quota response time. There's a lot of factors that go into it. So that's good to just get out there. All right, so I'm going to bring up the Guardian again, but this one I just want to actually get your guys' opinion on it, because I know for pararescue, I kind of wish there was another pararescue movie. So I know there was one that came out, but it wasn't really as much about like following through the actual PJ through the entire story. It's kind of about the case and all the stuff that happened around it. But I think the Guardian, like I said, I love that movie. I actually, happenstance, I didn't mean to do it today, but I turned on the TV, it was on, and I just sat there and watched it, and I was like, dang, I'm going to talk some rescue swimmers right now. So how do you guys feel about the movie? And what do you think that it's done? Is it actually like, what you guys have done operational? I know you talked about having different jobs and stuff, but, is it similar, not similar? If a person watches it, can it be like, that's it, I'm doing that, and that's what it's going to be, or what?
Yeah. Vince, you want to start with this one?
Sure. Wait, I just want to know, what's the PJ movie? Because that sounds fun to watch too.
Yeah, it's called The Last. Yeah, The Last Full Measure. So the archetypical pararescueman, his name's Bill Pitzenbarger. He won the Medal of Honor. So he initially was awarded the Air Force Cross, and after 20 years of lobbying and a lengthy process that was actually undertaken by the people that he saved on the ground in Vietnam. So he basically single-handedly stopped an Army infantry unit from being overrun, and he saved, tens, 20 casualties. And he actually did so. He waved the helicopter off like 5 times. So he no kidding, he risked his own life knowingly to save everybody. So the Army unit actually went through an entire process of lobbying through Congress to get him the Medal of Honor. And then he was eventually upgraded from the Air Force Cross to the Medal of Honor. The Last Full Measure goes through that entire process, but like Brian was saying, they focus more on getting it through the wickets of Congress and figuring out what actually happened on the ground that day and hearing the stories of the survivors. It didn't really talk about pararescue and like pipeline or like the Guardian did. They took you through kind of the process to get there.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of that Meg Ryan movie with, I want to say like Denzel Washington or something. Back in the day, and like Matt Damon got super skinny for it or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah.
Here. But anyway, sorry, getting on. Yeah, the Guardian, I'd say like a lot of swimmers would certainly disagree, but I would personally say it's a overall cinematically great movie, right? Hollywood's going to make it entertaining. Yeah, who would want to watch somebody doing maintenance in the on the aircrafts? Maybe for like a little interaction and like building the rapport between the swimmers, sure. But like, you're not really going to show that. You're going to show the action of it. And on that standpoint, it's fairly accurate. Of course, not every time there's a SAR or search and rescue call, you're not going out in these like nightly big storms like hurricanes like they're showing in the movie. A lot of times it's just a medevac on say like just a big ship, right? And that's pretty standard, putting him in a litter and then getting him hoisted and back to safety. So yeah, I would say it cinematically it's great, and it's not that inaccurate, per se. I guess we could talk about the ending. Maybe that was a little
that's what I was gonna bring. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I would say like also just to cover the training portion too. I always like to say like the training portion of that movie, like the first, I guess, like 3/4 of the movie when they're actually in rescue swimmer school is, I think it's portrayed actually to make it look easier than it actually is. And then the cases are a little more like Hollywood kind of throws in their little their spice in there for those cases. Usually they wouldn't be like that intense. So if you kind of flip flop that, it would be like a perfect movie to portray the job.
Just FYI, we did do like that GQ type breakdown on YouTube. So you can check the rescue swimmer mindset. We literally are there watching the movie and be like, well, that's not really accurate or whatever.
I'll make sure to link it. I'll put a card in right here so they can click over and check it out.
And the last scene where, they basically the senior chief Ben Randall has to let go, and fall into the ocean because they can't hoist up 2 guys because they're too heavy. Basically what would happen is you could shear that cable and you could just pick up senior chief later. It wouldn't be a big deal. So in real life, the helicopter just lower down, drop senior chief in the water from like 10 feet, and they just like fix the cable real quick, and then they'd pick him up. It would be pretty much no big deal.
Yeah, it's like they address the fact that this hoist cable was malfunctioning, right? But the altitude, like the cyclic, the collective wasn't working. Like the pilots couldn't go down a little bit to just make sure he doesn't fall. From,
they could have just kind of plopped him in the water.
Stories. Yeah, just lower him down and then get him later, drop him a raft and be like, see you later, Ben Randall. Like
a lot of options.
Pilot
there.
Had a vendetta.
But it's, they have to make it cinematic. And I think like if you look at the special features for that movie, there's an alternate ending where they both make it back into the aircraft. I think like Disney was trying to push it or something, even though it's not a Disney movie. And like, yeah, like it was like, instead of the, sorry, spoiler, but like the Cedar Chief dying, it's like they both get back, and then Ashton Kutcher goes, well, you don't see that in the manual or something like that. It's pretty corny. So
then you guys,
I don't know why
if you haven't watched it in 15 years,
making me laugh.
If you haven't watched it, it's been out for 15 years, so it is what it is. Sixth Sense. Never mind, I won't go there. All right, so the next one is, so we got that Guardian stuff out of the way. It's still a great movie in my opinion. So I want to go to a little bit more about like how your guys' team is structured. I know you're talking about having, a guy that you're part of the air crew once you're actually flying and doing all that kind of stuff. How's your guys' team structured, and how do you guys go to pick up, if it is that Guardian scenario where you're trying to pick up some guy from a cutter or whatever? What does your team composition look like, and aircraft, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So for search and rescue, we have 2 aircraft. So we have the 60, which is just basically like a converted Blackhawk. And then we have a 65. I think it's called the H-865 Dolphin. It's the orange ones you see flying around on the coast a lot of times. They're a lot weaker than the 60s. But basically in either crew, so also it kind of depends on where you're stationed at, whether you're on a 60 or 65. Both aircrafts have 2 pilots. Usually like a more senior pilot in charge or pilot in command, and then a more junior pilot. Then you'll have a flight mechanic, which is usually what we call an aviation mechanic technician, and then a maintenance technician, and then AET, which is aviation electronics technician. They're the flight mechanics, so they're doing basic air crew stuff. They're talking on the radios a lot of times, and they're kind of talking with the pilots, keeping everything safe. And then there's a rescue swimmer stationed in the back, and he's doing pretty much nothing until you get out to the case, and then he's the guy going in, or guy or girl going in and doing the job and then getting hoisted back up.
Yeah, it's the same thing as PJs. We're pretty much, we're supposed to be flight following, quote unquote, the entire time we're in the back. But, most of the time, we just kind of figure out we're still almost there. How far are we out? We're at 30 minutes and take a nap or whatever.
Yep.
Unless we're in, a place where we have to actually be looking out there.
It's kind of like a piece of cargo, right? Like that, like let's check everything in the helicopter. Do we have like our rafts? Do we have whatnot? And then swimmer?
Yeah,
okay, the swimmer's there.
And the joke with the air crew is like you could just get like a golden retriever to do our job. You can just throw them in the back.
Yeah, we do the same thing. So we joke. We're like, hey, if they can ever figure out how to make a hoist with opposable thumbs, the helicopter seems to think they don't even need us anymore because they'll just be able to pick people right up, and then poof, no more PJs, right? Like same thing for rescue swimmer. If they ever figure out how to have a hoist with opposable thumbs, you guys are out of a job.
Yep.
Yeah, we talked about that, like the longevity of these career paths. Like I'd say, I don't see a near future or like an end for rescue swimmer anytime soon, but eventually like things, less and less you need them, and a lot of things are contracted too, as well as like as far as search and rescue goes, like the oil riggers, right? They all have their own system in place for that they wouldn't call the Coast Guard for that. They have somebody hired as a rescue swimmer for them. Yeah, it's kind of interesting thinking about that, like where the career will go and how it will evolve in the longer term,
Absolutely. We'll ask that question a little bit further down. I want to get to just kind of the day-to-day. I know I'm stealing it again, but we mixed it up. I didn't mean to steal it from you, Trent, but at the last second, Peach kind of had to duck out, so we moved some names around. But as far as the day-to-day, life as a rescue swimmer, what does that look like for you guys?
Yeah, so it varies kind of depending on where you're stationed. So we are both Air Station Detroit. So basically what you do is you go into work. So there's 2 different types of days. You have like a duty day where you're on duty, and then a non-duty day where you're just going into work, doing your job, training, and then going home. So on a typical non-duty day, you go into work like 7:30, maybe 8 o'clock. There's maintenance that you're going to be doing. So we'll have like maintenance on life rafts, radios, stuff like that, random maintenance for the helicopter. You do that in the morning. Typically you do that for a few hours, then we'll go hit the pool or hit the weight room, do some sort of workout for a couple hours. Typically then we'll go back to work for like an hour or 2 more, and that's your day. So it's just a lot of basically split 50-50 workout and maintenance, pool, non-pool. And if it's a duty day, basically you come in and you're standing duty at the air station. You don't go home at night. It's kind of like a firefighter, I guess, if you'd imagine that. You just kind of go into work, hang out with your crew until there's a case, and then you go out if you have to. What about, there's training flights too. So maybe you can go into work on like a typical, maybe like a Tuesday, you go into work, do some maintenance, go out for a flight, fly all afternoon, come back, wash the airplane and go home. So it kind of depends day to day. It's a lot of just random moving parts. Got anything else, Vince?
Well, I guess the one benefit that you mentioned a little less is like, we are the jocks, if you will. So, jocks need to get their PT time in. We gotta go bench. Yo, you're
right.
impeding on our bench time right now. So we do get a allotted slot of dedicated training time. Like the job, if needed, is very physical. You need to stay in shape. You need to not be the drowning.
You can't talk about going into 30-foot seas with breaker, especially in the cold, and not be in like peak physical condition. Like you're just setting yourself up for failure if you think that you're just going to hop into that environment and just be okay.
Yeah, we had a great guest on our podcast, Sarah Faulkner, who's one of the few female rescue swimmers to ever make it, and she was talking about just one of the grueling mission that she had to just catch up with a sailboat, I guess, and just the way it was drifting away in these heavy seas was like, just total sprinting, because she was sprinting back and forth, pulling survivors, and she had to get back to the boat, and she got like sucked in underneath the stern and whatnot. So.
It's terrifying.
And the props and stuff.
The ocean is terrifying. The open ocean is terrifying, and big, nasty, angry open ocean is more terrifying than anything else. Like it just is.
Yeah. Well, Hawaii so you guys, is like when I would deploy in Hawaii, it's just lovely. It's like Nemo land. You're like, oh, look, it's so blue. It's just like nice and cyan color. But like, you get into like the colder, like the Atlantic, and it's just black. And you're like, I would never picture like a shark. I would always picture like a giant octopus, even though they're like way in the abyss. I would always picture that like tentacles coming out of nowhere. It's just like, oh yeah. Brian and I were off the coast of San Diego, so we were doing some helocast training. So Brian and I were out there, and I distinctly remember floating around with Brian, 15 miles, I guess, off the coast of San Diego. We're floating in the Pacific. We've got all of our strobes on. We're bright and shiny. And for 1 second, the only thing I thought to myself was, you don't belong here, and there's something that's evolved for millions of years to eat you, and you look really good to that thing right now.
Really good and shiny.
Then I just had to like completely delete it from my memory because I would just be overcome with fear. I'd be like, oh God, no. Yeah. So let's take it all the way back to the beginning, right? So the nitty gritty, what everybody wants to know when, especially with us, all of the questions that we get are about, hey, what's assessment and selection like for you guys? What does the pipeline look like for you guys? So from day one, you apply to be a rescue swimmer. You show up on day one. You get through, I assume you have to go through some sort of Coast Guard basic training before you go to your A school. So we'll just breeze past that. But you get out of that basic training. You show up to rescue swimmer day one of the pipeline. What does that look like? And what should people be really set up to expect on that day one as they start to go through?
Yeah. So the Coast Guard recently changed their whole procedure for sending anyone interested in going to be a rescue swimmer through. So I'll just go through the new one just to save time. So the new thing is basically when you go talk to your recruiter, you take a PT test. And if you pass this PT test, it's just like pretty simple. It's 40 push-ups, 50 sit-ups, 3 pull-ups, 3 chin-ups. You do a 500-meter swim under 12 minutes, do a 1.5 mile run under, I think, 12 minutes also. If you pass that PT test, you're going to get this contract called an Annex X contract. And basically what that means is after you get out of boot camp, they send you to an air station or close to an air station where you get to work out with basically an airman or Annex X syllabus that's just full of workouts and kind of sign-offs specific to being a rescue swimmer. And if you successfully complete all that, they send you straight to ASTA school, which is just rescue swimmer school. And that's in Elizabeth City, North Carolina. So that process is roughly, I would say, anywhere from 12 months to 18 months. And once you get to ASTA school, that's another, I believe it's 4 months there, but they recently changed it. So when we went through, it was 4 months. It could be 6 now. I think they might have added on some extra classroom stuff there. And that portion in Elizabeth City, North Carolina, the ASTA school portion is the part you see in The Guardian. That's just the grueling everyday working out, Monday through Friday, like 7 to 4 or 5, or 1700, and working out, weekends off, and you're just getting beat down pretty much for the whole time.
So we just had somebody that's going through this NXX program on the potty, as we like to call it, on the podcast, and he was basically saying, yeah, the majority of folks right now that are trying to be rescue swimmers, it seems like the best route to success is going through this program, but there's still like the folks that are just stationed at a random station, right, and that want to go that career field. We call it a rate, so an MOS, right, for you guys or whatever. And yeah, so you could be stationed on a cutter like I was and still want to go swimmer. But then there's that whole, I guess there's the logistics of trying to train on a cutter. Like that was my experience, right? Like that was where I got stationed. That's not what I specifically wanted per se, but like you had to make do, right? And then, yeah, you're training in the gym in the bow there, like rocking seas up and down, trying to like do your pull-ups and like timing the waves. So it's definitely like, if you're set up like that, I see it as like NXX programs, folks are like they're going to make it like they're the high value athletes. And then there's the free agents that are like
the walk-ons, right?
Yeah,
the
exactly.
walk-on.
Yeah. No, I totally did the same thing, man. So I went through it. I'm not going to display my ego and pretend like you guys have listened to my YouTube about my cross training, but it was essentially the same thing back in the day when I cross trained. So I did another job and then I wanted to be a PJ. I just kind of like showed up. I took a bland PT test. I took our pass test. I got, approved for cross training, and I just kind of like showed up at selection. It was just like, hey, everybody, let's hope this works out. Luckily I'd been there before, so I knew what to expect, but same sort of thing, just, doing another job and training and wanting to go over to the other side of the fence because it turns out it was awesome. So it's awesome to hear that you actually cross train from another job. That was kind of cool.
Yeah. So it was set up a little differently back then. But now if you're looking to join the Coast Guard and you want to be a rescue swimmer, 100% get the NXX contract. Don't try to join the Coast Guard and try to lateral over. It's going to be way harder and not going to be fun. So just throwing that out there.
Yeah. We have people that'll ask all the time. They'll be like, should I get in and, maybe I'll get in and try to be a firefighter, or I'll get in and try to be a cop and then go PJ later. And we always tell people the same thing. Like, why would you do that? If the goal is to be a rescue swimmer, then go to NXX and go be a rescue swimmer. Like that's logically what I would think.
100%. Yeah.
As you guys are going through your A school, it's obviously really, really heavily focused in the pool and on the water. Do you guys do anything on the land, like log PT or rucking, or do you guys do any land-based, during those beatdown sessions? Are you guys land focused as well during that time?
Yeah. Go ahead, Vince.
Well, yeah. So usually you start your day off in rescue swimmer school on what's called the grinder, right? So you go to the grinder and there's these pull-up bars and there's usually take out some kettlebells, some box jumps, and all this nonsense. And yeah, you'll do some runs. You'll do basically a CrossFit type grueling workout, beat you down, and
for like 3 hours.
Yeah, the severity of this can vary depending on the day, of course, and then you'll get in the pool after that. So that's more or less your warm up on the average day. It's rare that you go straight into the pool. And yeah, like I recall, I don't know if it's still there, but there was a log. I think we used it like one time, but it was kind of funny because I think they base it around the Navy SEALs, like buds and maybe PJs. They had it there maybe for occasional PT, like, or disciplinary regions or whatever. But we would always like look at it like in the morning and we would just call it like two different adjectives, like, the log of truth and despair, the log of love and hate.
I love team jokes. Like there's no real way to explain to somebody why that team joke is funny unless you were there. So it's one of those things. Like, and we all have them too. Like you explain it to somebody, like, why did you guys call that the log of truth and justice? Like, well, it was hilarious. You're just gonna have to take my word for it.
Yeah.
So we talk about getting the right guy or gal all the time. Like our selection and assessment, it's a personality-based assessment and selection. Like we're going way towards, more attributes. Can you tell me what kind of attributes people that you are looking for as an AST, as a rescue swimmer, you're looking for, this set of attributes that are going to be successful in your career field?
It's a good question. We were never in the position of, an instructor, right? So actually granting the permission for anyone to become a rescue swimmer. Though sometimes people would shadow us to try to, see the day in the life of the swimmer, and we train them or whatnot. But as far as like Cody, what would you think as far as somebody's personality, if we were to go down that route? Like, what would you say makes a good candidate?
Personality is kind of hard to kind of pinpoint because it varies so much from person to person. I'm trying to think. One of the big traits you'd want in someone to get through, you want someone to be really adaptable to like a really like complex situation. So that's something they select for in the training. And I'm sure it's the same for all. I mean, it's the same for all kind of still really like high attrition rate programs like this. But they're looking for people who can, be told a set of instructions. You got to do this, this, and this. And then they'll give them like a scenario, like, hey, here's a scenario. There's this boat that's sinking over here in the pool. There's 4 people in the water. They'll tell you all that. Then you have this like set of rules you have to go through and checklists you got to go through. You got to execute every single one of those things to the T and then get everyone safely out of the water. But a lot of times you'll hear this certain thing and then they'll completely change it up. They'll be like freaking 10 people in the water or like 1 person in the water, but it's totally different, like a medical thing. So it's adaptability, I think, and staying calm under pressure.
I'd say one thing that I'd say most swimmers, as far as like the personality and like the mindset goes, right? Because Cody's right, personality is always different. But as far as the mindset goes, one thing that Cody and I have realized about ourselves is kind of like when shit hits the fan, everything seems to slow down, and you go like, I guess your defense mechanism, if you want to call it defense mechanism, is to just be calm and just kind of relax. And like, if anything, that's like, it's stressful in a sense, right? But it's the time when you feel oddly least stressed. It's, you're everything, you start to take control of your steps and you go through that checklist and you do the best you can. But that's not to say like in our everyday life, there's stress and like anxiety, right? But like when shit goes south, then it gets to the point where you're like you can adapt and you go through the checklist,
You just hit problem solving mode. Like ready, set, go.
Yeah.
And like just block everything else out, right?
Yeah.
Would you say
that's
that
what they look for?
Oh, nice. Yeah, sorry. Is there a place where people are too smart to do the job? Is there like a silver lining? Because we always talk about it. Because you talk about like when it hits the fan. Is there like I don't know if you guys the ASVAB and all that, like your academic scores. If you're too smart, do you guys see like a paralysis by analysis or whatever in that situation?
I'd say yeah. Like personally, I would get into trouble and probably it was surrounding my mindset, maybe I would come off as like know-it-all or whatever. That's definitely like something to watch out for. Like I had pretty good ASVAB score or whatever. I wouldn't associate ASVAB with necessarily being smart. It's just like two things together. But I'd say one of the funny things, and I think that's kind of your question, is when I was getting approved to go to rescue swimmer school, right, through my airman program, and personally, I thought this airman program was harder than rescue swimmer school. The chief, like the person in charge of me, he has to sign off, and like what he wrote in like the little comments was, what was it? It was like smart enough for a swimmer career, a successful swimmer career, and dumb enough to make it through the suck. So dumb enough to make it through the training.
Perfect.
Nail on the head.
Yeah.
I got it.
I just want to make sure that the Brian's theory is sails through all these type of career fields.
Goes across branches too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Listen, and we haven't been able to disprove it yet. It's a pretty solid theory.
Makes sense.
Yeah, the ability to kind of shut down, and like I think one of the way I would perceive, when it would get really rough is like I would just take my body, like leave my body to do the exercise and take my mind out and just kind of watch myself like it's a movie or something. And you're just like, you make your body more of a robot, like you assess when it's breaking down and when it's getting exhausted, and you make those adjustments, but you try to take that mindset away from it and leave the body to do its thing. And just like, you're like, oh, look, that guy's in pain. Like, oh, it's rough on him. We'll see if he makes it. But let's try to make these adjustments from, it's like the Monday morning quarterback. You take yourself away from the pain, the suck,
Yeah, we call our students cones, and we call it coning out. You just cone out and do it.
Nice.
Stop worrying about anything else. But what are those like high attrition events or the hardest part of y'all's selection process that either was difficult for you all, or you lose a lot of candidates during those processes?
So I'd say there's 3 different points where you're likely to fail. So if you're one of those people that are going to quit, you're going to do that in the first like 2 weeks of swimmer school. It's basically, there's no tests or anything. They're just kind of beating you down on the grinder, and then they're putting you in the pool, and they're giving you a bunch of things to do in the water. So a lot of underwater laps, the infamous buddy brick drill, where you're just like, I don't know if you guys know about that. Maybe we can cover it later. Buddy brick drills, treading with a brick, and just basically seeing how far you can go until you pass out. So there's all that. And if you get through that and don't quit, there's another test that comes about probably 2 months through rescue swimmer school, which is called the 1 man. It's just it's a non-compliant survivor. So basically you do a simulated rescue with rescuing 1 person. And that's a big weeder. That weeds out a lot of people. A lot of people can't really deal with the complexity of a case, of dealing with like a simulated case, or they just aren't strong enough to handle the survivor who's trying to basically choke you, take you underwater, and drown you.
So that was Hodge from the movie, right?
Yeah, that's Hodge, and you do the elbow. That's actually, that's a good one. You just elbow the instructor right in the face and good to go.
So that never works out. For everybody out there, do not do that.
Yeah.
That instructor is going to murder you.
When they teach you to, just panic and hit him in the face. That's definitely the last thing you want to do.
I run a side gig podcast, a Wildertainment podcast, and I just had somebody that was in my swimmer class that failed out. And he didn't fail out because of this specific event, but he did fail out because he got into that panic state. And his initial instinct when the instructor jumped on him, because he jumped on him from face on, which is often what happens, he was like really out of oxygen and like kind of hyperventilating, panicking, and he punched him like right in the face, right? And he got him under control, and they called a training timeout. I think that's part of it, right? Is going through the steps that they teach you, not like going rogue. That said, in those kind of environments, you should be going through your steps, but like I guess you got to do what you got to do. Another candidate I recall, we called it like the karate cha. Like the instructor, again, they come in with like a big swooping arm movement and usually wrap your neck, and they take you underwater, and you got to do these things to get them off, right? But the first thing you do when there's a panicky survivor is you take them underwater because I don't know if they do this now because like they've learned jiu-jitsu, but what we would do is you take them underwater so that they want to let go of you because you're no longer buoyant. You're not a survival gear anymore. You're hindering their survival, so they'll let go. But
be the anchor.
Yeah, but usually you want to do that immediately. And I guess this instructor like hopped on him like with the arms, and like this guy went like with the karate chai, just going cha, and like he blocked like the instructor from like swooping his arm, and then like the instructor was like, "That's not what we're doing." And he like came again.
I don't know why
I'm ready.
That's hilarious to me. Just
like, no. And like he passed the test. Like it was kind of like he added his own step, right? He just needed an extra breath. He's like, not yet. I'm not going underwater just yet. I need to. Okay, now let's go.
That could work in real life.
Just surprise the person.
It's not dumb if it works, man. Like if it works,
And as far as I'm not even mad. It's
As far as drills go, Cody mentioned briefly the buddy brick, and we're just gonna spew all over the Guardian. But that's in that movie. You guys saw like people moving bricks at the bottom of the pool, and in the movie, they played it off as a very simplistic task. It was just one other little drill. But that is definitely, as far as just not a test, but just as a drill you have to do and kind of be successful at, that's a brutal one. Because I recall, what the evolution is, you have a brick, I think it's like 10 pounds at the bottom of this 12-foot deep pool, and you need to have both hands on the brick at all times, except for when one person can come up to take a breath. So at all times, there needs to be at least one hand on it, but you can only move it when 2 folks have their hands on the brick, pushing it forward, right? And then you can stop. One person stays on the brick, gets one breath usually, and then comes back down. And it gets you into that like hyperventilative state of, it's no longer just holding your breath. It's the timing of it. It's working as a team. That's definitely a very hard drill. And it got so hard that like, I recall, one, like the airmen that were next to me in this drill one time, they had like their strategy was, it was just a 50 yard for this one. So back and forth to the pool. And they were like, you know what? I don't want to do this nightmare of up and down bobbing. Let's just, because we're trained well. Most of us can do a 50 yard underwater. They were like, let's just take the brick and both swim it, one hand on it, back and forth. And like on their way back, I'm underwater doing my drill, and I see one of the guys is just like floating head down at the bottom of the pool.
Yep.
Yeah.
Take that.
Night. And I was like, what's he doing? Like, it doesn't look like he's staying there,
Do Do you have a term for that? We call that meeting the wizard when you have shallow water blackout.
No.
No,
Have
we
you
don't.
guys
No.
experienced
We need
it,
one.
or-
Oh, shallow water blackout?
Yeah.
Brian, are we allowed to say if we have? Does that make me not a PJ? No.
You've never
Like-
lost consciousness.
Yeah, I've never lost consciousness due to my staying underneath. It's always a thing. You're always really close. Like I know, especially our underwater iterations. Like sometimes you do 5, but Brian, when he was an instructor, his favorite thing would be like, okay, well there's our 5th one, and then he would just say 1's ready, and you're getting ready for the 6th one, and you're like, holy crap. So we've all definitely been close. I don't think I've ever blacked out hard, but I've definitely my vision has gotten to about a soda straw size, and I'm like, oh, well, here we go.
Yeah, and we actually also do the buddy brick. We don't do it for the 50 meters, but I don't, give too much away on that kind of stuff.
Right.
But you'll do pretty much the same kind of thing in our selection. And the one buddy rescue or the one person rescue also. It's not as intense as being a test like your guys is. It's kind of just like, are you able to know what to do for a panicking survivor? Basically, but it's not as much of a test.
So what would y'all recommend as if I'm 17 years old out there right now, I want to join under the Annex X program. What should I start training on today? Are there 3 things in succession that I should start working on if I want to be successful?
Yeah. So the big one is going to be just make sure you can meet the minimum PT numbers. So those numbers are posted everywhere online. It's not hard to find. Basically, it's just upper body strength.
You would think they're not hard to find.
That's true.
Yeah. Bold of you to assume.
Well, we
check
talk
on
about
Reddit
it all the time on our
yeah. So if you can pass the minimum PT test, what you got to do is get in the water as much as you possibly can. Get really comfortable doing basic swimming. So freestyle swimming with dive fins on. So we use jet fins, basically some sort of jet fin, some variation of that. And you got to be able to fin just basically forever with jet fins. You're towing a dive brick. So basically a side tow with a dive brick, or towing a buddy for thousands of meters. You got to be able to have just strong legs. So basically strong legs, strong water confidence. So lots of underwater laps, treading with a dive brick. Yeah, that's pretty much it. If you have water confidence, strong legs, you could probably make it through swimmer school. That's my thing. Anything else, Vince, for stuff to train?
No, I know that was interesting talking to the PJ there, Brian, or is it Brian Deckard? Cody? Yeah.
Brendan.
Yeah, sorry. Coming on, and he was talking about how the PJ pipeline evolved to include assessments on the candidate's personality, right? Like to see how they would operate in that team environment. I thought that was potentially a great system to have in place, because I think somebody was talking at one point and they mentioned, it's one thing to have a stud, right? That's not cranking out 80 push-ups and whatnot, but nobody wants to work with them, right? That's going to break down the team, versus what you got the guy that's supposed to meet the 50 push-up mark and he does 48. Dude, he's probably eventually going to get to the 50 push-up mark, but he's a stud. He's a great leader. He's a great team member. He's got his mental dialed. Well, who would you prefer to have on the team, right? So as far as swimmers go, I guess you operate as a team in the aircraft, but once you get on scene, you are a little bit more separated. But I still think it's a valuable thing to potentially assess, right? Is folks' personality and how they would operate in that team environment. But as of now, it's really just, can you meet the standards, right? No discrimination on your personality or whatnot. So
speaking of discriminating based on anything, and I think you've already covered this, I just want to put it out there and ask it because we get this question fairly often, even though it's been answered, is females. Females are allowed in, and about how many are there? And are there any issues with that, or is it just the standard and you just ready, set, go?
Yeah, it's 100% standard. If you meet the requirements and you're solid in swimmer school, you're going to get through. There's been, I can't say the exact number, approximately 7 to 8 female rescue swimmers. And there's a few active right now. We had one on our podcast recently, and the ones that make it through are studs. And, a lot of times they're just crushing the guys in the pool. If they can pass everything, doesn't matter. They're good to go. There's nothing holding you back.
And so just kind of switching back, I know you guys, your podcast is called The Rescue Swimmer Mindset, and I want to talk about that just a little bit. just because a lot of people that are coming in, I think it's pretty transferable across branches and things that guys are doing. The end state, for pararescue versus rescue swimmer is that you're going to go out there, you're going to risk your life to bring somebody else home. And I know earlier on in my career, especially when I was training for this thing, one of my biggest fears is like, what am I going to do if I'm not able to save a person? I'm not able to, go through it. And I know, PTSD and all that kind of stuff is kind of prevalent. And even in The Guardian, they show that stuff of where, the guy's not able to save whoever, one of his buddies and that kind of stuff. So, from my point of view, it's always going to be difficult to go be in that situation where, you can't actually save everyone. How does that play for you guys? And do you guys have any advice to people who are considering this thing and they, are playing that out in their head? Like, what do you guys do when you find yourself in that situation?
Tough question. I think there was a couple of jokes in the shop at one point. I was kind of the grave digger because most of the cases I would go on, it was mostly just somebody being dead. So it was too late. And yeah, seeing those dead bodies in the water is definitely something that sticks with you. I don't know. That's a hard one. I'm still trying to work out myself. How do you get out of it? You go through your venues, your VA or whatnot. And yeah, I don't know, talk about it, I guess, and try to stay active always in your life. That's kind of what we preach. And once you've reached a certain goal, keep going, working towards the next, and yeah, don't stay stagnant ever. It's definitely important.
Yeah, and I think one of the important aspects of that too is just, your whole goal is to do good as the job that you signed up for pararescue. And for me, when I measure, the amount of good versus the potential amount of bad that I might have done, I don't know, could I have stepped earlier to the aircraft or, gotten something else prepared sooner, or could I have, done whatever and gotten to the place sooner and then helped that patient? Who knows? I mean, how many seconds have they been dead? Whatever. But, I think as long as you put your best foot forward and you're able to actually say yes, I mean, as far as I can tell, I can't prepare for every single thing that's going to happen, but all my stuff was ready. I was trained and I did my best. And then your good outweighs the amount of, potential bad that you will have done, because I'm sure you've actually seen the person that's coming home and had that kind of reward of yeah, I did my job and this person was able to go home. So I think that's just I just wanted to cover that and get a little bit deeper for a second and talk about that kind of stuff, just because, for myself, it was weighing through my head when I was trying to come in. Cody, you got anything on that?
As far as that goes, I think a big thing that I try to teach people is even for training is using a disassociative mindset. Or so if you have a situation, you look back on a case or something, and something went wrong, it didn't go how you wanted it to go, someone didn't get back in the helicopter with you. Basically, you can, kind of take a step back and look at that situation objectively and try to find areas where you messed up, but try to detach your emotions from it. Just look at it from maybe a third person, someone who would be reading it in not a manual, but in a report written up later, and try to find the things you can correct for future reference and kind of move on. Try to just detach emotionally from things like that.
Yeah, it's definitely important to be able to detach in the situation, and it may feel pretty surreal when you're going through it. And then eventually, once you actually sit down and think about it, that's when everything just kind of comes crashing down. You're like, what just happened? You try and go over the process over and over again, but it's important, like Vince was talking about, to go and talk to somebody about, what you're going through, preferably somebody who was there or can feel the same things that you were feeling. All right, so lighten it up just a little bit. So it sounds like I want to talk about family stuff real quick, just because we get this question a lot for us, because we're deployed a lot. And, like I've told people in the past, over 300 days, my first year, I was gone as a PJ. So what's family life like for you guys? And is it pretty consistent as far as if people want to have kids and that kind of stuff and do that job? Or was that look?
Probably hands down by far the best job in the military as far as managing a family life. I think as far as again, it depends on the season, right? So if there are a lot of commercial fishermen out there and there's a lot of cases, you might be a lot busier and that takes away from your family. But in my own experience, depending on where you get stationed, you get a good amount of time. It's a good schedule. It's fair. If you have a case, then you get I think the full next day off sometimes. So, and then you tend to have weekends if there's no duty. So it's tends to be a civilian-y job, if not less than like a 9 to 5. Sometimes it's less than 9 to 5. So, I'd say it's very manageable to have a family. And if anything, it should be something to strive for, not something that should scare you off, is to have this job where you can have the time for your family.
Agreed. Yeah. 100%.
And I was not expecting that answer.
Yeah.
Because usually 99% of the time it's like, bro, it's hard. You guys are like, nah, man, it's cool. Like, definitely have time for family. And I'm just like,
I guess here the caveat is we don't actually have families.
We don't have kids.
So so everyone, so we
that's a good qualifier.
Speak first person there. But I've never heard someone complain about the family life as a rescuer in the Coast Guard. No one everyone pretty much were in Detroit where we were both stationed. The majority of the air station and just the swimmer shop had families, and no one complained about it.
Yeah, and not just that, the system in place, depending on the shop and the command and whatnot. But you usually support each other. So you're like, hey, my kid's got something going on. I got to go now. Usually, somebody's going to pick up your slack and just cover your ass for that period of time. So from my understanding, it's a good gig for family life. That said, we were just talking with a guest that's stationed Kodiak, and some of the swimmers occasionally go out and are stationed on a helo that's tied to a cutter. So a boat out there in the Bering Sea, that'll take you away from your family for a couple weeks on end, if not a month or two. So, there are those shorter deployments, but we're not going per se overseas to do a tour for a year. That's not how the job is set out. So
it's structured, right? Yeah, and I think on our side of the fence, our support system and our command structure is usually as flexible as they can be to help everybody, maintain that work-life balance. But I think we kind of opened up what's the difference between Air Force Spec War PJs and rescue swimmers. And as the only person on this podcast currently right now that's uninterested in saving people, I guess I'll just kind of put this out to everybody. Can someone please summarize what the difference is between pararescue and the Coast Guard rescue swimmers? I guess y'all get to take a hack at it.
Sure. I'll just say, I think a lot of folks that join the Coast Guard, it tends to be, for the opportunity to save lives versus take lives. I think, folks that go, I think there's a similarity of anybody that's going to special forces type, Navy SEAL or Green Beret or whatnot. They want to have the challenge and see if they're capable of making it, test their wits, test their strengths, their physical, their tenacity, if you will. Right. But yeah, I think it's it's that mission of maybe you didn't want to go buds, which is grueling, but not for that purpose of not going through the training. It's just maybe the mission itself of potentially having to take lives. Swimmers, yeah, it's really based around search and rescue. So I think that's definitely one of the appeals as a difference to maybe the PJ mission,
Yeah. What it seems like basically, we have no guns. That's basically the big difference. But realistically, we do a lot of search and rescue. If you're joining the Coast Guard, be a rescue swimmer, we're going to be doing search and rescue. You're definitely going to have a search and a case. You're going to go save lives. You're probably going to do that a lot, pretty often if you stay in for a long time. It seems like we do that more often than a PJ would. But when a PJ is called out, it's usually a bigger case or more gnarly, from what I understand. But I don't know if that seems kind of accurate or not. Just less volume.
Yeah, I would say that's true. Taking the combat aspect of it, completely out. We do have a lot of skill sets that are remarkably similar. You might not be able to tell the difference. If we were dressed in the same clothes and working on a helo, you might not be able to tell the difference between a rescue swimmer, on a case as opposed to a PJ. And like I said before we started recording, we've worked with rescue swimmers before, and we're looking forward to going down to Astoria and working with those guys and gals as well. So yeah, I think the main difference would just be that combat aspect of it, and then the whole soft side of it. I think the rescue swimmer mission is awesome because it truly is, you're totally focused on search and rescue. So we always try to help people decide, because they'll ask us, should I be a rescue swimmer? Should I be a PJ? And we say, well, what do you want to do? Is what you really want to do just solely focused on search and rescue? Or do you want that special operations combat aspect of it? Because that's a big dividing line, and it's totally okay for people that aren't sensitized to it, because sometimes people, even with PJs, are like, oh, you guys are totally focused on just search and rescue. And we're like, well, no, we have a whole lot of other things that we focus on. And depending on the mission set, sometimes we're not focused on search and rescue at all. We're focused on shoot, move, communicate, and be a part of a special operations team that's performing a direct action function, as opposed to truly like, hey, somebody's hurt, lost, or dying, and we need you to go get them.
Just last week on the podcast, Cody was mentioning the fact that, he went through advanced helicopter rescue swimmer school with a couple PJs, and their adaptability was really spot on, and their ability to just learn a task really quickly and execute it like well, something that we train on a day to day, but not necessarily you guys, but you pick it up really quick. Cody, do you have anything to add about that? Like serving with the PJs? I went through the advanced helicopter rescue swimmer school with two of them. They were solid. They're both in Portland. I don't know if it's a reserve unit, I think. They were solid guys, both of them. And I mean, you pretty much could give them like any task and they would be like, oh yeah, that's pretty simple. Even though they hadn't done it before, it seemed like, because they were like deploying into like what we were doing. We do that stuff all the time. Like we trained to get deployed into heavy seas, breaking surf and caves and stuff. And they were just like, oh yeah, we'll try that. Like whatever. And they were just solid. Yeah. And I was like, all right, it's impressive. Yeah.
Okay. I mean,
like,
what are we doing today?
Yeah, exactly.
Brian, a funny story. Brian and I were in Iceland together. We were doing the NATO air policing mission, right? So we were basically the team that was, if one of the pilots were to punch out over, the Icelandic, Northern Atlantic, we would have to go get him. So the Icelandic Coast Guard wanted to do some work, and we were like, oh yeah, we'll just throw the dry suits on and we'll go get in the water and we'll pretend to be survivors. So they didn't tell us until like way later, but they brought us in and they were just like, the training was so popular because there were a ton of people wanted to come out and like take part in this training. Well, it turns out that nobody was dumb enough to just volunteer to get into that frigid water for as long as you needed to train. And Brian and I didn't know any better because we're just like, oh, I mean, yeah, what do you need? You just need us to jump in this freezing water and be your survivors all day? Sure. Yeah, that's fine. Is that what we're doing today?
You're like, good to go. That sounds like something a rescue swimmer would do too. They'd be like, all right, yeah, sounds fun.
Yeah. What are we doing? That sounds awful. Let's go.
Yeah. Brian, did you have something for that? Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
I'll do it at the end.
Cool. You got the wrap. So my last question really is for Vince and Cody. And it's what do you think it is about you two that made you successful at being rescue swimmers? And as always, was it worth it and why?
Okay. Yeah. So as far as being successful, I would say, like we mentioned earlier, it's just staying calm in like intense situations. And that's something I think I've always had. You just get really tested on that at swimmer school. So number one thing is just being able to stay calm and collected, follow your procedures. What were the other two? I kind of blanked there.
No, just the last one is looking back at your time, was it worth it?
Oh, 100%. It was definitely worth it. I'm actually debating right now getting back in the Coast Guard to do the same job. So that's still to be determined, but it was worth it. It was a blast.
That siren song, man. Yeah. You almost made it. You made it out the other side. Now you're going to go back in?
I think I'm trying to go back in.
It's always one more.
Yeah,
that's awesome, dude.
Yeah, exactly.
That's motivating.
Oh, yeah.
Well, because it's like, you know better now. You know the good and the bad part of it, and you know what you're getting back into. Man, that's commendable.
Oh, yeah. I'm excited. So 100% was worth it. And obviously I'd do it again.
And yeah, I'll say like this little story, I mentioned the too dumb to quit. Yeah, there was a swimmer, I don't know, you recall him, Cody, but Robin, a very strong swimmer in our shop. We were doing like a little training, and at the end of the training, we did like a tug of war, and he was pulling on one end of the rope, I was pulling on the other. And, this thing, usually it takes a couple seconds, right? But this thing dragged on for like, I want to say 3 minutes, and 3 minutes of pulling on these, like a rope as strong as you can is like a long time. And I think he eventually let go. And like I pulled him across the finish line, and he goes like, I just stopped at one point because I know you were seriously too stupid to quit. And I think that, there's something to say about that. Like you just need to be able to push it to the very end of your abilities, and just it's not really an option. That said, don't go into it with the cocky mindset of like you're gonna make it, but just going over with that mindset of regardless of what happens, I'm not gonna pinch, I'm not gonna pop on the underwaters, I'm not gonna call it a day. And then I guess the last thing, that kind of our motto in my class going through the swimmer school was look strong, be strong. So regardless of how afraid you are or how much anxiety you have, personally, I think I always came off, one of my flaws was I always came off as cocky. But the reality is I was really scared, right? There's definitely anxiety there. And I think my shell was to come off as cocky. Still to this day, something I work on. But I think that was an asset when it came out to going out on the pool deck, right? Like, again, look strong, be strong. Like I might've been like a wreck before, but then the second I kick in that door to the pool deck, I was like, I'm gonna fuck all these instructors up. Sorry for my French, but like it was like,
first of all, that's
awesome.
That's not French, but I am motivated, baby. I'm about that. I am about that. Go take some souls with your young student self. I love it.
So look strong, be strong is something not to forget.
That is some fantastic advice right there. I think, what you were talking about, look strong, be strong. Whenever I would walk out into the pool deck, obviously, I'm fairly chill kind of person or whatever, and I'm not like a yelling in your face kind of person at all. But when I walked out onto the deck, I did my instructor role and everything, and you'd see a lot of students that were just, kind of shoulders hunched over, looking down at the pool, felt like they're about to get their butt handed to them, and they will if they act like that. And they're just like, what are you guys doing? Like, first couple weeks, that's my biggest thing, is like working on that, even just projecting like you're confident, even if you're not confident, because you don't know what's going to happen. I know what's going to happen for the most part. I mean, unless things really go south and you guys mess up too bad, but getting that little thing out of your head is like, all right, they're not going to give me anything that I cannot do. It's all going to be stuff that is in some kind of, lesson plan, or they've done, or it's been at least somewhat tested to where I can do this thing, whatever is going to happen. And I think just projecting that confidence and sitting on the deck with your chest out, chin up, ready to fight whatever is going to be coming your way, really goes a long way, not only for the way the instructors perceive you, but also for the way that you perceive yourself in that kind of situation. So if you have that mentality of like, all right, I'm ready to mess some stuff up, and then you go on to the next thing, obviously things are going to get tough. You're going to get slapped in the face every once in a while, and you're going to have to re-examine your perceived toughness, but just keep on going with it. And I think that's really important to realize as you're going through this thing, because there's going to be things that you've obviously never done before. That's why you're there, to push yourself past those limits and increase your abilities to, do whatever it is that you've been training up for. So, super awesome. Again, thank you guys both for coming on the podcast. It's a Rescue Swimmer Mindset podcast. Make sure you guys go check them out, listen to them. Biggest things that I kind of picked up, because I'd known, one other rescue swimmer that went through, and he was cross-training over into PJ, and that's the only way that I knew him. We used to call him the Guardian because that was when the movie had just come out. So that was his nickname during the whole time. Just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah. To his credit, though, there's not many people that you'll say they smoked in dock, because it was in dock back then. He was actually like a marvel to watch in the water. Like that dude crushed that water con event. The instructors were trying to screw them, and he was nearly unscrew-withable.
No one doubted from day one that he was going to make it. So, that really transfers over. And like you're talking about, the mindset of the rescue swimmers is the same thing. And kind of summarize all the stuff that you've been talking about. Obviously, the Coast Guard mission is a little bit different than the Air Force or the other branches that are combat-oriented type of mission. But I think I get a lot of emails from guys that are like, do I have to shoot people as a pararescueman, or do I have to do this, or what is the combat like? What is deployment like? All that kind of stuff. And, if your mindset is like, I want to go in and I want to save people, and I specifically want to do that, and you've done the firefighting job, you want to find a different aspect, a lot of your rotations, the way that you're on shift, the way that you like deploy for a month or two to a cutter and that kind of stuff, very similar to that kind of mindset of firefighters and being able to rescue versus, pararescue. You're going to be on a rotation to deploy pretty much every year for 4 or 5 months out of the year to whatever other country, do land-based type of stuff in addition to this kind of stuff. So I kind of see it as being like a general practitioner, as a PJ is a jack of all trades, but we're not going to be as well versed as you guys at doing all the, in-flight or specific swimming techniques. None of us, I'm sure you guys could probably outswim us with that kind of stuff, because we don't have, that's not our main thing. Swimmer is not in our title, basically. So, you guys would be like the, surgeon or specialty person if you were a medical person. So that's kind of how I view that. And then also the positive for you guys, from what it sounds like, is family life. If you were looking into that and you're looking to do something awesome and you have kids, or you want to just, be there a little bit more often. Not to say that PJs can't be there, but, like I said, 300 days on my first year as a PJ. So you can expect to be gone a lot with the AF spec ward job. But rescue swimmers, sounds like you have a little bit more time at home anyway. So I think those are the biggest differences. You guys got anything else to add to that?
I was just going to say, like, if folks are trying to like better themselves in the aquatic realm, even going PJ, we do have a lot of students that, check out the programs that we have for that. Like, we have a hold your breath like a helicopter rescue swim program. So for the water confidence aspect of things, it tends to be helpful, breaking it down really to the science and like the operational aspect of, just succeeding in the water. And yeah, like it's cool, like seeing all these different branches coming in for these elite military programs and going through and getting our help, and then even seeing your podcast and learning. It's kind of cool to build this community,
Absolutely, that's what it's all about.
Absolutely, yeah,
building that community, making sure that we kind of crosstalk. There's no reason for us to not crosstalk in this day and age. And that's why we're doing this podcast. We'll continue doing other ones. We got a Green Beret that's lined up, and then a couple other guys that are going to be of those kind of, different career fields, special operations type, where we can just try and differentiate. And like I said in the beginning, what kind of jobs you might want to do and what mission aligns with your core values. That way your entire, wholeheartedly, you can walk into that career field and say, this is what I want to do, and this is why I want to do it. And then all the rest, obviously you need to complete the selection. But I think it's very important for you guys to try and have the options and the opportunity to decide on which one you're going to want to go to. So thanks again for Cody and Vince for coming on and sharing a little bit of their knowledge with us. Make sure you guys go check out they got a YouTube, and they also have a podcast, Rescue Swimmer Mindset. So check them out. They got some cool videos where they're, like they said, going through and breaking down some of the videos that are similar to underwater scenes and all that kind of stuff. So super awesome dudes, and we really appreciate you coming on. For you guys out there, thank you again. Like I said, it's been a year, and we appreciate the support that you guys have shown us over the past year. If you guys ever have any people that you want to get on as guests or anything like that, always, hit us up in the inbox. And of course, we're always out there answering your messages. So you guys go out there, train hard, earn each breath, and we'll see you guys later.
Thanks, fellas.
Later.
Have a good
Appreciate
one.
it.